It's a beautiful Friday morning in the city of Ibadan in Nigeria, West Africa to be precise. Today is May 12, 2017, and this is AM Live coming to you from the studios of New Frontiers Television. My name is Adiola Adegoke.
And I am Precious Amaye. Thanks for joining us on AM Live this morning. And when Diola was saying Africa, West Africa to be precise, I thought she was going to keep breaking it down to regions. Well, you only stop at West Africa. You should have continued. ECOWAS, and then you say Nigeria, Southern Nigeria, Southwest. You just keep going and going until you get to the fact that the streets and the very number of the house.
Okay, maybe for next time, some other time I'll remember that.
All right, it's Friday morning, and I'm very sure in most parts of the world where a Friday is a working day, a lot of people are excited that the weekend is coming, just to have enough time to rest, But in some parts of the world, Friday is not a working day. Thursday, it marks the end of the working day, and some people are already enjoying the weekend, as it were. But here in Nigeria, it is a working day, and that's why we're on your screen this morning, bringing you AM Live. As usual, we have a lot lined up for you this morning. A lot of conversations going on in Nigeria. In fact, you wouldn't even know where to start from, especially around politics and governance. And one of those conversations in Nigeria at the moment is the issue of the 2019 elections. It's funny that it's 2017, but the conversation on the 2019 elections have already started. It sort of shows you how interested Nigerians are now in the politics and governance of the country, and how involved, not just interested, but how involved we are. And just yesterday, we brought you news that INEC has promised that in 2019, we're going to have a better elections than the one of 2015, although the one of 2015 was said to be free and fair by election observers. But INEC said yesterday that they were going to top it. And we also brought you information that the ROECs, which is the resident electoral commissioners, have now been the screening for the National Assembly have started the screening for the resident electoral commissioners who will be responsible, as one of the stakeholders for the 2019 election. But today, INEC has also, issues on elections continue. INEC has put together a committee that would plan for a planning committee for the 2019 elections.
Yes, and the planning committee is tagged the election projects plan. Their work is to prepare for the 2019 general election. Just like Precious said, it's 2017, and it's good to know that the Independent National Electoral Commission is preparing for 2019. There have been questions for Yakubu, that's the chairman of INEC, concerning all of the past elections that have been held since they got the mandate to hold office in INEC, and people have been asking, how will 2019 be? Some people are not sure if the current state of INEC is enough for us to go forward with the 2019 election. But Yakubu, he started last week by giving us, I think 2 weeks ago, by giving us a rundown of the 2019 timetable for the elections. Yes. Although some stakeholders have also said that's too early, but at least it shows that the commission is actually working towards ensuring that the 2019 election is better than the 2015. He actually did say it yesterday, that it's going to be better than the 2015 elections, and we're waiting and watching. But back to the election project plan committee. The committee, as the EPPC, that's what is being called, is expected to coordinate all departmental and state inputs into planning of elections. They are to monitor the performance of the 2-year budget estimates for general elections, identify the gaps, and advise the commission appropriately. They are to produce a comprehensive valued election project plan for the commission's approval. They are to ensure the integration of the election project plan and the EMRs for effective implementation and monitoring. They are to provide quarterly progress reports on the implementation of the EPP up to the election day. And we do hope that with this, this committee is able to deliver. It's a 16-member committee. There's 16 people in that committee, and looking at all of the profiles of those people, I think they are up to task, and we do expect that the 2019 election won't fail concerning all of these plans that they are working towards.
You mentioned earlier that INEC has released a timetable for the 2019 elections, February 16 for National Assembly and the presidential elections, while March 2nd is for the gubernatorial and state houses of assembly elections. And this is the first of its kind to have a committee planning towards the 2019 election. It's never been done before. It shows you how serious Mahmoud Yakubu is when he said, look, we're going to have better elections
Better,
in
yeah.
2019. It's never been done before. So having a planning committee for elections it's a fantastic idea, welcome development, to ensure that the elections, the elections are free and fair, and then also successful. To look at the irregularities of the 2015 elections, the loopholes, and say, okay, we're going to fix it. How do we fix it for 2019? 2 years ahead, it looks like, why you
Right.
taking so much time? We still have 2 years, but it's a good thing. It gives enough room and enough time to deal with all of these issues, and then it also to begin to take sample opinions from Nigerians. What were the difficulties you experienced in 2015 elections if you voted? And if you didn't vote, why didn't you vote? And how can we better the elections? You also notice that there are a lot of elections around the world now, and it's a good learning ground for Nigeria. I was telling Jumoka on the show yesterday, it wouldn't be a bad thing to have, if we had an election observer from the INEC for the US elections, if we had one for the French elections, for the Gambia elections, the South Korean elections, and we should also have one for the UK elections holding June 8th this year. So there are a lot of elections that we can learn from, things to pick, things not to pick, how to better our election process, really, because we have to, one of the greatest process of democracy is free and fair elections.
Yeah.
That cannot be undermined. If you take out free and fair elections, then the foundations of democracy become very shaky. So I hope we get it right, even better than we did in 2015.
And we do hope that the Electoral Act, which is being worked upon, is the final plan on it is concluded before the 2019 elections. We know that there are lots of issues that arose from the 2015 election that needs to be dealt with, so that there won't be a repeat of what happened in 2015
Exactly.
in 2019 again. We do hope that, for me, it's about the National Assembly swinging into action and not waiting until it's close to the elections before we get a rundown of some of the things involved in the Electoral Act, so that as soon as INEC is planning, we expect the political parties to also be getting prepared for the elections, and the citizens also would be enlightened on the process, what needs to be done and what needs not to be done concerning elections. And again, maybe someday, very soon, maybe 2019 will be the year when we will say, when we can actually boast of free and fair election and true democracy in Nigeria.
We've had near cases. We leave that to election observers who say these elections were free and fair. I think one of them was the 2011 elections, the first election that brought in President Goodluck Jonathan.
2011
was said to 2011 elections was said to be free and fair. So was 2015. Everybody has their opinion about the elections, but if we go with the opinion of election observers, these elections were free and fair.
But when our elections keep having, when we keep having tribunals after each election,
I think
it undermines the effort of the INEC.
It doesn't, because the thing with election tribunals, a court is there for aggrieved persons, and you have a right to feel aggrieved. If people just feel, oh, I saw this and I'm going to speak about it, I don't think that in Nigeria we're going to get to the point where anytime soon we're going to get to the point where people say, oh, this election was actually free and fair, I should not go to the tribunal. Not because the election was not free and fair, but because people just feel, if I accept easily, then what about my followers? Let me just go to tribunal. Let's see what the tribunal says. I might be lucky, who knows? So it's not really, anybody has a right to go to tribunal. Hopefully, really, like you said, I also think about it sometimes that the day will really start to not have, they really don't have tribunals. They will do away with tribunals, and the days that we can actually say everyone now trust in the electoral process in Nigeria.
Yes.
People still, I think it's about trust. People still think that, well, everybody has the capacity and ability to, tweak the elections to their favor. So it's really about trust. When we all start to trust in the electoral process, then tribunals might become a thing of the past.
Well, I'm looking forward to that day.
Exactly, same here. Looking forward to that day. Like Dela said, hopefully the Electoral Reform Act, the Senate has passed theirs. We're waiting for the committee set up by the presidency as well to pass theirs, led by the former Senate president. We're waiting for them to also pass theirs, and hopefully theirs. The one done by the Senate president was really, really nice. Sorry, the Senate was really nice, well captured. But there's some issues not clear and expanded in this. For me, I think that one of the issues is the issue of conduct of political parties and politicians. It should be well captured. And we're going to take a break now. When we return, we'll look at more electoral issues coming up from INEC. Do stay with us. All right, welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're still watching AM Live here on New Frontiers Television. We'll continue to focus on the issues around the 2019 elections now and our big stories. INEC did commence its voters registration recently, and now it is said, well, INEC has given the report that about 73 million registered voters. They have about 73 million registered voters so far, but the process is not as smooth as INEC claims it to be, according to reports. INEC has said the process has been smooth. Nigerians are registering, but in some places people are complaining about the voters registration process.
Yes, the registration we started on April 27 has been recorded as a success by Professor Mahmoud Yakubu of the INEC. After 3 days, he came up to say that the exercise was going on well and that the number of registered voters has increased beyond even what INEC had thought. But in areas like Anambra State, we will be holding their elections next November, that's November 2018. People have started complaining that there is no sensitization towards the registration conducted by INEC, and that voters, registered voters now, voters who want to register have to get to local council before they can do their registration, as opposed to what was obtainable in previous registrations, where there are registration points in almost every street where people can register. And they're saying if you expect people to turn out en masse to register, then you need to sensitize the public, let them know that there's a registration going on. Which again, I think the first time I heard about the registration, I know a lot of people came up to ask that same question, that when did INEC come up with that plan? But again, as much as we understand that, of course, INEC has to register people against the 2019 election, considering that some Nigerians just clocked 18 after the 2015 election, and there were people whose data were not well captured in the last election, so because of that they do not have the PVCs, and there are people who have lost some PVCs have been damaged, some were not able to collect their PVCs. We would expect that INEC would make sure that people understand the process of registering and where and what they can do concerning PVCs that are misplaced, or if you don't have, you've registered before, you don't have, maybe because
what do you do?
And if you want to transfer, I think they've made a provision for transfer of PVCs now. In the 2015 election, that was majorly one of the reasons why most people were not able to collect their PVCs. But now there's a plan for transfer of PVCs, and they should make this thing public, let people understand. And also, there's been also complaints about the direct data capturing machines. In some of these local councils, there have been complaints that these machines are not functioning, although the INEC boss has come up to say all of their machines are functioning. But we do hope that INEC will look into this. The people have been there, they've seen what's happening, and of course, so if they are giving a report to INEC, I expect that INEC should look towards ensuring, if they are promising us a better 2019 from the 2015 election, we do expect that they look into all of the complaints of the people and sensitize people. For me, that's the major thing anyway. Sensitize people, let them know that you can go and register. Even if INEC doesn't have the kind of budget to have more registration centers, let them know if it's between a period of time, okay, you can be at the local council at so time to register, and you can collect your PVCs at so centers, and that would be a better plan.
I think one of the major issues which a lot of people are talking about is the issue, like you already talked about, is the issue of publicity and awareness. A lot of people are not aware that the voters registration is ongoing. You have to be a news savvy person, like you have to really be interested in news and to know that such a thing is going on. INEC has to give it more publicity, actually, especially for the grassroots. There has to be more grassroots publicity for people to know that the exercise is ongoing. Those who have turned 18, those who have misplaced their voters card, those who did not collect their PVCs in the last voters registration exercise. I mean, they have to know that it is ongoing. People have complained about publicity. Another issue is the fact that the distance from where people live and the registration centers, it has to be, as I know that INEC is trying to limit how much you spend, prior to the election period, particularly. But I mean, be made to be close as possible to people's house. If you're only using local government centers, and sometimes people live far from their local government councils, so that's too far. There are other places that INEC can use that is central to everybody, so that people are able to leave their homes and register. The idea is that people register, and if the place is too far for some people to register, then if some people are going to be disenfranchised just because they couldn't register to vote. And another thing is the fact that we've talked about publicity, we've talked about awareness. Now the Anambra people are saying, look, we should focus on Anambra because we have an election in November, which, if you look at this one extent, it should, for now, since general elections are in 2019, Anambra is this year, which is November 8th, they should have more priority at the moment to ensure that people register within Anambra state. It should be a priority state. And there is nothing wrong with that because they have an election in November 8th and they will require these voters' registration cards to vote as well. So those are some of the complaints arising from the registration process, but key of them is the issue of publicity and awareness.
And as citizens also, you should know that you can also help the commission by, although Mahmoud Yakubu was saying you can be a whistleblower for the commission. If you know someone who is an underage and is registering, you can call the attention of INEC officials to it. I, for one, I know that there's no way, sometimes, of course, there's no way you can determine if someone says he or she is of that same age. There's no way you can determine for people of our generation. I know that
they aren't.
So if you are aware of underage persons registering, you should call the attention of the INEC officials. And again, if you get to these registration centers and you are asked to verify your age, you're given a form for age verification, don't feel offended. It's part of the things the commission is putting in place just to ensure
that we don't
have
underage
voters in coming elections.
All right, you've heard it. The voters registration process is ongoing. Find out what's happening in the state, where it is happening in your state, and go register if you haven't registered. If you just turned 18, go get registered because it will matter in 2019. The problem is that most of us complain but never vote, and then when the people we don't like get into power, we complain even more, whereas we could have voted. One of the reasons some people have a voice today is because, oh, look, I didn't vote for Buhari, or I didn't vote for Jonathan, or I voted Buhari, or I voted for Jonathan. So it gives them a voice to say, to be able to complain. Your vote is your voice. Go get registered. Moving away from that issue now, just to let you know that today is International Nurses Day. It's International Nurses Day. Amazing to have nurses being celebrated, but just to give you a highlight of the day, International Nurses Day is a day celebrated around the world every May 12th, the anniversary of Florence Nightingale's birth. You can find, it's just a day to celebrate nurses around the world every May 12th, and it's Florence Nightingale's birth. Just to let you know, the theme for the year is Nurses, a voice to lead, achieving the sustainable development goals. In 2016 rather, it was Nurses, a force for change. Now it is Nurses, a voice to lead, achieving the sustainable development goals.
Well, we all know the great work our nurses do. They are the first set of people you get
one of the first responders.
Yeah, first responders in cases of emergencies or health issues, and of course we celebrate them on this special day. And well, if they are to lead as it is, and we do expect that for the government now, I think that's the major thing for me. There have been issues of health workers going on strikes because the allowances are not being paid, salaries are not being paid, or because they are not receiving enough. If those people they're the ones who respond in cases of medical emergencies. I was reading a poem about nurses yesterday, and the child was describing how while he was growing up, the mother was hardly available, and when she comes back in the middle of the night or whenever she comes back, she's too tired to respond, and they all have to stay around the table just to watch her, see her face, and the children pick up the blood stains from her. They point at it and tell her, and she shares her day with them while at the table. And the son was saying, if only people out there understand how difficult it is to be a family of a nurse. And of course, we appreciate their work, and we do expect that the government would also appreciate their efforts, do more for them, and help them to become better at what they do. this is bringing it back to Nigeria. This is the 21st century. We go to most of our hospitals. There's basically nothing there for these nurses to work with. This is an age where people are improving by the day. And there was a mass exodus of nurses to foreign countries. That shouldn't be happening. So the government should try and ensure that they are well appreciated and they are given equipment or the amenities they need to work with so that their works can show as it is.
You know, I saw a headline, one of the headlines this morning, one of the papers that read that we are not less important than doctors, and that's coming from pharmacists. So it wasn't even coming from the nurses. That was coming from the pharmacists. You find situations where in every sector, everyone in the sector is trying to say, look, we're just as important. So you find judicial officers saying, look, we're just as important as lawyers, and saying we're just as important as the judges, you have to treat us well. We don't have to get to that point because everyone has a role that they play, and we have to treat them just as well as we treat them just as well as we treat a doctor, because they are the gap. They are the bridge rather between the patient and the doctor. They do a lot as well. They have, in fact, they do a lot as well. And we have to also take care of them the way we take care of the doctors. They are not less important. And you don't say, oh, because there's this thing about, there's a tendency to look down on a nurse because you feel, oh, well, you're not a doctor. But they are just as important. And this is the day to celebrate them. If there's a nurse around you, if there's any nurse you know, go celebrate them. If you go to the hospital today, if you, whatever you find a nurse today, just celebrate them. We also had a day for midwives earlier in the month. And these are people who midwives are people who don't even talk. They hardly even hear their voices. They don't come out to tell you we're important, but they are all important. Everyone within the sector, whether pharmacists, whether the microbiologists or the biotechnologists or the medical lab attendants, whether it's the doctor, whether it's the virologist, whoever it is, whether it's the nurses, the midwives, everyone has the role they play, and they are just as important. Everyone do not have an international day, but the nurses do, and let's take today out to celebrate them for the work they do, for the effort, the sacrifices that they make.
Yes, so happy Nurses Day.
Exactly.
It's all our nurses.
So every nurse, whether male or female, happy nursing day to you, because there's a tendency to think of nurse and the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh, a woman. But there are male nurses as well as their female doctors. So celebrate a nurse today. We congratulate all the nurses today. We say happy Nurses Day, International Nurse Day to you. We'll take a break now, and when we return, AM Live will continue. Do stay with us. Hi, welcome back. You're still watching AM Live here on New Frontiers Television. Now, around the world, one of the biggest issues of the 21st century is the issue of the climate change. In most countries around the world, there are either issues of earthquakes, you have issues of flooding, or even drought. And one of the things, that's because of the climate change. And one of the things responsible for climate change is deforestation. In Nigeria, since 2005, it ranks, has the highest rate of deforestation in the world, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. In fact, between 2000 and 2005, Nigeria had a 55.7% of its primary forest, completely wiped out.
Oh, well, and it's also important to know that towards the 2020 agreement, the Paris 2020 agreement, all nations are supposed to work together to ensure that we go back to being green. That's the tag. Everywhere has to be green again. There's been campaigns towards ensuring that we pay attention to the environment, tree planting and all that. There's been campaigns against tree falling and all other things. But again, our reporter, Jumoke Babalola, did a report on deforestation, and we'll give you a report. Then we'll be back on AM Live soon.
Trees have furnished us with basic life's essentials, which include oxygen, food, clothing, medicine, and shelter. Their value continues to increase, and more benefits of trees are being discovered as their roles expand to satisfy the need created by our modern lifestyles. However, these benefits have been depleted due to deforestation. Deforestation is a process where the vegetation is cut down without any simultaneous replanting for economic or social reasons. It is a permanent destruction of forest in order to make the land available for other uses. Common methods of deforestation are burning trees and clear cutting. These tactics leave the land completely barren and are controversial practices. Deforestation is considered to be one of the contributing factors to global climate change. Deforestation occurs around the world, though tropical rainforests are particularly targeted.
Deforestation is actually cutting down of trees, degrading wildlife, and which is what is very common around this part of the world. As it is now, everybody wants to build houses, everybody wants to buy land, and that's a major reason for people to actually cut down trees so that they can get some immediate gains. They can make some money out of it. And this is not helping our system in the sense that it distorts the ozone system, the ozone layer, and degrading the ozone layer actually brings about direct rays from the atmosphere, which is not very good for our skin, which predisposes everybody to cancer.
Indeed, a lot of damage has been done to Nigeria's land through the processes of deforestation, notably contributing to the overwhelming trend of desertification. Desertification is the encroachment of the desert on land which was once fertile. According to data taken over 2000 to 2005 in Nigeria, located in the western region of Africa, has the largest deforestation rate in the world, having lost 55.7% of its primary forest. Deforestation also accounts for a devastating chain of events, both locally and around the world. These include loss of species, as 70% of the world's plants and animals live in forests and are losing their habitats to deforestation, and this is according to National Geographic. Also, social soil erosion. Tree roots anchor the soil. Without trees, the soil is free to wash or blow away, which can lead to vegetation growth problems and an overall reduction in the quality of life. Along with economic issues, deforestation has made it such that the land is incapable of as much agricultural production, which is part of many people's survival. Issues such as these and the subject of the environment itself has contributed to many conflicts in the country, and even executions of environmental activists such as Ken Saro-Wiwa, a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. Indeed, the nation that destroys its soil destroys itself, according to Franklin D. Roosevelt. Many believe that to counter deforestation, people simply need to plant more trees. Though a massive replanting effort would help to alleviate the problems deforestation causes, it would not solve them all. Calls have been made for the provision of legislations to contain illegal felling of trees, especially through the efforts of the Federal Ministry of Environment, which is charged with the overall responsibility of protecting the Nigerian environment, including biodiversity, conservation, and sustainable development of natural resources.
Once we cut woods from the forest, I think we should replace them almost immediately. Fine, it takes a lot of time to grow, but I think we should replace them because we do a lot of things with wood, furniture, frames, a lot of things.
We can do something about it. The critical stakeholders, the governments, the individuals, they come up with something and we can remedy this situation. Firstly, I will advise that the government come up with serious legislations that will ban people from illegally felling trees, knowing the impact. Another one is I would like the National Orientation Agency and every other relevant institution or agency to go on for a radical reorientation of the masses, telling them why they should not be engaged in this social ill.
Without any conservation, effort, or education, the society is not aware of how to properly treat finite natural resources. Efforts should be geared towards lowering the deforestation rate and especially stop illegal logging. It is expedient for all to know that, in the words of Baron Alexander von Humboldt, by felling the trees which cover the tops and sides of mountains, men in all climates seem to bring upon future generations two calamities at once. One, want of fuel, and second, a scarcity of water. Let us work together to preserve our forest and, of course, avoid illegal felling of trees. Olajumoke Babalola reporting for New Frontiers Television.
Improper disposal of waste has been described as one of the ways Nigerians experience untold environmental and health hazards. Apart from the offensive odor that emanates from such refuse dumps, it also has health implications on those who live around such areas. The composition of these wastes are very complex. They comprise synthetic materials, electronic waste, biodegradable material, and many others. The synthetic materials include broken bottles, empty melter containers, and remains of polythene bags of sachet water, popularly known as pure water. But experts believes that the dumping of these wastes indiscriminately is a major cause of most of the illness affecting those living around such areas.
The dumping of refuse in illegal places is something that will contribute great problem, not just for the individual, but for the country and the nation as a whole. Think about the diseases that will spread, one, and think about the inconvenience that gives us when there is rainfall. You know, it causes a lot of havoc for people. It is what you do that you will surely get. Let's be healthy. and let's make our environment healthy. That's the way to go through that.
Dumping of this waste along the roads and public places can cause the blockage of the drainages and sewage system, leading to unnecessary flooding.
Most of these refuges go a long way in blocking some of the drainage systems, and before you know it, most of these individuals complain of overflooding in their territories or even in their houses. Aside from the fact that it affects the drainage system, it equally affects the health of individuals. These refuges harbor diseases, and before you know it, there will be an outbreak of disease, of pandemonium, of the outbreak of diseases, and people will start complaining of having several ailments, disease here and there. Before you know it, majority of them land in hospitals, and for unfortunate ones who do not have the resources to be able to take care of themselves, they end up having a lifetime ailment or even dying in the process. So all the concept of individuals dropping refugees where they are not supposed to go in at illegal places is completely barbaric.
The government provides a means of clearing such refuse dump along our roads, but these has not in any way reduced the magnitude of waste and refuse dump. In an era where the country thinks of diversifying its revenue, waste management can generate a lot of revenue, employment opportunities, among many other things. It also improves the economy of both individuals and the community. Segun Funmi Oyedokun reporting. Improper disposal of waste has been described as one of
for staying with us. Those were two different reports by two of our correspondents. First one was deforestation and preserving our forests by Jumoke Babalola, while the other was on waste disposal by Segun Funmi Oyedokun. And both of them are focused on the environment, environmental pollution and environmental hazards, which is one of the cries of this century, one of the cries of this age as relates to climate change. And in Nigeria is in, we know that we have heavy rainfalls in Nigeria. When it comes to issues of flooding, whether deforestation or waste disposal have a direct correlation with flooding. And a lot of people have lost their shops, they've lost their houses because of flooding. Yet, these issues of deforestation and waste disposal abound.
And of course, it is important that as we move into the rainy season in the last couple of weeks, the rain falling in different areas of Nigeria has been heavy rainfall, and it spans the timeline spans a longer period than we used to have before. It's important for citizens to note that it is our duty to protect ourselves. It is our duty to protect our land and environment from natural disasters like flooding, majorly flooding in major parts of Nigeria, which is why it's a call for you to ensure proper waste disposal. We just like Precious said, lots of people have lost their shops, their lives based because of flooding. It was the rain that fell, I think maybe last week in some parts of Oyo State, that saw some areas flooded again, and you see all of those areas. It's not like there were no gutters. We keep calling on government to line gutters, build, reconstruct the roads, and ensure that there is free passage of water. But again, we forget that our citizens like you and I are the ones who dump refuse in all of these gutters, blocking free flow of water. If we keep doing this, if we keep throwing things out of the car as we move, if we keep dumping refuse along the road, of course there won't be free passage of water. And as the rain keeps increasing, and there's nowhere for the water to go, it would end up flooding into our houses and affecting lives and properties. And we know how floods can be. And we were discussing, and it was the Red Cross. The Oyo State seems to have one of the largest flood. It seems to be part of one of the largest flood-prone area in southwest Nigeria, and people should pay attention. It's indiscriminate dump of refuse that leads to there used to be a time when Oyo State is ranked as one of the dirtiest cities, dirtiest states in the country, and we do hope that people pay more attention to how you dispose that piece of paper, that line on that you just think the wind will blow away, might be one that will cause disaster to your family.
Yeah, even for Oyo State, we now know that government has put a bit of effort into keeping the state clean by employing people who actually sweep the road. And people sweep the road all the time, yet you find death. Not because they don't sweep it, but because Nigerians like you and I always decide that it's better to throw things out of the window or dump them indiscriminately. And just in case you don't know, it is not just about flooding or destroying properties, and it also affects your health. And most of us go out most of us go out, and then sometimes we're stuck, when it's raining, and whether you like it or not, you have to move from one point to another. And if you put your feet in that water, it could cause health hazards. And we don't think of all of these things. We just think it's not coming back to haunt me. It's not coming back to affect me. A lot of people lose their houses, lose their lives because of issues of flooding and deforestation in Nigeria and even around the world. And if we just pay attention to it, it will help in adding to what government is already doing to ensure that flooding and issues of flooding and the adverse effect of climate change is not as harsh as it is. Now, we can reverse climate change. We can only manage it. And that's what the Paris Agreement was about, in 2015, when nations came together to sign that agreement. It cannot be reversed, but it can be managed. And that's what we are now. We'll have a role to play. And just to give you the definition of environmental hazard by Wikipedia, it says an environmental hazard is a substance, state, or event which has the potential to threaten the surrounding natural environment and or adversely affect people's health. So it threatens the environment and it affects people's health, and that's something that we must keep in mind if we are to protect ourselves and protect our environment and keep Nigerians safe for all, especially the environment. There's a report where the United Nations or World Health Organization that ranked Anambra State the most environmentally polluted state in the world. That's Onitsha in Anambra State. It's the most environmentally polluted place in the world. And imagine that. And so if we don't, Nigeria keep ranking high in all of these things, because while government is not doing enough on their part, citizens are not also doing enough on their part. So let's all play the role that we are supposed to play to ensure that indiscriminate waste disposal and deforestation are a thing of the past. We're going to take a break now to allow for the morning news, and after the morning news, AM Live will continue. To stay with us. With us, you're now watching Morning News here on New Frontiers Television. Good morning and thanks for joining us. I am Precious Amayo. The federal government has said it is planning to convert the Industrial Arbitration Panel (IAP) into a commission to give it more power in its operations in the country. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, disclosed this while receiving the management team of the Industrial Arbitration Panel in his office in Abuja. Ngige said that the establishment of the commission would enable the panel address most of the challenges being faced in the discharge of its responsibilities. The minister said that the establishment of the commission would enable the panel to give its judgment without fear or favor and without discrimination. Ngige also noted that the ministry was also working on the outdated IAP rules guiding the establishment of the panel. He added that in spite of the challenges, none of his decisions has been upturned by the National Industrial Courts. Another batch of 258 Nigerians have returned from Libya. The returnees, comprising 229 male adults, 24 females, 4 children, and 1 infant, arrived at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, at about 9:50 a.m. aboard a Libyan Airlines flight LAA 1464-1465 through the efforts of the National Emergency Management Agency and the International Organization for Migration. Over 1,500 Nigerians have so far returned from Libya since the beginning of the year, some voluntarily while the others were deported. NEMA said the returnees came back voluntarily and most of them were artisans who had gone in search of greener pastures. NEMA's Deputy Director of Search and Rescue, Dr. Bandele Unimodi, who represented the Director General Alhaji Mustag Maihaja, said the agency was in touch with the returnees in various state governments for the rehabilitation programs for them. Still on national issues, we're now moving to education. The federal government has deployed 5,436 volunteer teachers to Lagos State under its NPower job scheme aimed at boosting human capacity in public schools in the state. The state's Deputy Governor, Dr. Idiat Adebule, made a disclosure at an induction course for NPower teachers organized by the State's Ministry of Education in Ikeja. She said the major challenge in the education sector is a shortage of manpower, and it is a fact that quality teaching and learning is better achieved when there are fewer students for a teacher to handle. Adebule added that the injection of the huge number of core in the school system should considerably address the challenge. She emphasized that the state government recruited 2,300 teachers in the last 2 years to reduce the teacher-students ratio. The Deputy Governor noted that the incorporation of the volunteer teachers into the education sector would address the problem of shortage of teachers in Lagos public schools. And still on education, an agency of the presidency, the President's Schools Debate Nigeria, and Ekiti State Governor Ayodele Fayose have honored some brilliant secondary school pupils of the state. They were honored for an outstanding performance in an international debate competition in Singapore. The state contingent came tops of the National Junior Engineers, Technologists and Scientists competition and also came first in the National Examination Council Senior Secondary Certificate Examination. According to the coordinator of PSDN, Dari Oritu, the performance of the Ekiti debate team was the basis for nominating it to participate in the International Debate Championship in Singapore. Speaking at the event, Fayose advised the federal government to recognize the contribution of teachers to national development and reward them accordingly. We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll have more stories. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us in Morning News here on New Frontiers Television. Moving on now to health. A study has shown that over 4 million Nigerians are living with type 2 diabetes mellitus, a chronic condition that affects metabolism of glucose in the body. The study, led by researchers, noted that 4.7 million Nigerians between the ages of 20 to 79 years were living with the condition. According to the lead researcher, Dr. Davis Adeloye, more Nigerians will be affected by the condition unless stakeholders put in place effective public health response and strategies for higher public awareness. He also advocated for lifestyle changes, which include healthy diet and physical activity. The study noted that 40% of people with type 2 diabetes were undiagnosed and that deaths occurred for 1 in 5 diabetes patients admitted to hospital with complications from the disease. The complications can affect the heart, kidney, brain, eyes, blood vessels, and nerves. And away from the health sector now to business, the Naira's outlook remains stable in the near term as the Central Bank of Nigeria's efforts to improve dollar liquidity and achieve exchange rate convergence yield positive results. But investors remain concerned over the lack of a flexible exchange rate. The Naira firmed to about 305.60 to the dollar on the interbank market on Thursday, from 306.25 Naira to the dollar last week, and was quoted at 390 Naira to the dollar on the black market, better than the 391 Naira level where it traded last week. It was quoted at 382.63 per dollar in the period, enabling foreign exchange trading at rates set by buyers and sellers, according to the market regulator, FMDQ OTC Securities Exchange. The bank has been intervening aggressively since February to try to narrow the spread between the official and black market rates and has sold more than $4 billion. Still on business, but now on oil and gas, the federal government has backpedaled on its modular refineries initiative, declaring that it would no longer allow the proliferation of such refineries across the Niger Delta. The federal government had a few weeks ago stated that it would encourage the setting up of modular crude oil refineries in oil-producing communities across the Niger Delta, while also planning to legalize illegal crude oil refiners and inculcate them into the modular refineries initiative. Speaking in Abuja, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Mr. Ibe Kachuku, disclosed that having smaller modular refineries scattered across the length and breadth of the Niger Delta would heighten environmental degradation, worsen gas flare, and increase the problems of the region. And with that report, we come to the end of Morning News. Thanks for joining us. AM Live will continue shortly. Thanks for watching. I am Precious Amayo.
you.